Now, it is that time where we go from one end of the planet to the other, and we get to see what's going on in MLS because it has been a very, very busy week, and we get to see what it looks like with all of our friends in and around the planet, and find out what is on the mind. We found out what's on the mind with our buddy Nino Torres, and when he can dial in, we're going to catch up with our buddy Nico Moreno and find out what's going on with him in Major League Soccer. So before Nico comes back in, let me keep going over more signings and pens over paper. West Ham, Kyber La Madrid is joined on loan from Deportivo La Guaira with an option to buy. And 22-year-old underwent a medical a couple days ago. Also on the board. Let me see if we can slide through. Crystal Palace have had talks with Wolves over Jurgen Strand Larson, valued around £40 million, viewed as a replacement for Mateta if he departs, brought to England by Crystal Palace sporting director Matt Hobbs when he had the same role at the Molineux. Now, it is time to go to Seattle and find out what's going on in Major League Soccer through the mind of our buddy Nico Moreno, sounder at Heart and Pulso Sports, and the Providence and Swedish 5-minute oil change and voter registration booth. What is going on, my friend? It is another week for you and me in Major League Soccer as everybody's in training camp. Are they gonna send you to are they gonna send you to Spain for like next week?
No, I just got the news that unfortunately I will not be making that trip. So we could start there. Absolutely. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to shake and rearrange some of the previous personal calendar items that were set in stone by my head of security, better known as my wife.
The boss.
Yeah.
The boss.
Yeah.
Exactly. No, I know exactly of which you speak, sir. Nino was on to For You, and he had literally, there's something that is in the talking circles in Peru. And there was a question that was brought up, and folks in the Twitch pitch want your response to this as well before we dive into the week in Major League Soccer. Would you rather have your favorite team win the large domestic tournament or regional tournament, or would you rather have your nation's team win the World Cup? And when Nino was having this conversation with folks in Peru, they were like, "No, we want to win. We want to win Libertadores. We don't want to win the World Cup because then that means having to celebrate with our rivals, with the fans of the teams that we hate. So we want our team to win Libertadores instead of Peru winning the World Cup. Would you rather have a team win the Triple C in CONCACAF, or would you rather have your team win the World Cup?"
Well, that's a phenomenal question. To me, it's a no-brainer, and maybe it's because my teams have been there, done that. Nacional has won Libertadores twice. The Seattle Sounders have won CCC and both CCL at the time. So perhaps that's the reason why I would think that there's no other answer than Colombia winning a World Cup would be phenomenal. I mean, that is the one team that ever since I have any recollection of watching soccer, I have been excited about and heartbroken about every single time, whether we've had phenomenal teams with all the expectations like the 94 Colombia team, or that they've kind of earned your heart and kind of filled your emotions like the Colombia of Brazil. I mean, that team felt like a squad that was going to get through all the way to the final, but didn't. So yeah, it definitely, to me, is a no-brainer. Colombia winning a World Cup would be phenomenal for a nation that has grown tremendously at that national team level and as a league in general. So yeah, no, for me, Colombia winning a World Cup would be phenomenal. If it happened here in the United States, it would be even better.
Yeah, because he was saying his feedback was about 50-50. And literally it would be like, because he's an Universitario guy, it would be like, the folks that hate Universitario would have to celebrate with Universitario fans if Peru wins a World Cup, and they're like, "Well, no, we don't want to do that. So we want our team to win Libertadores." I thought that was just odd. I would think that you would want.
It was surprising, yeah.
That you would want your country to be number one on the mountain, And you want to be on top of Rainier. You don't want to be sitting there in the foothills by SeaTac, man. You want to be on top of Rainier celebrating with everybody. What do you thought?
Yeah, no, it's honestly surprising, especially for a nation and a group of in a base of fans the way Peru has.
Mhm.
That if you look at the last two World Cups, I mean, they travel better than any nation, even about as good or better than the Mexican fans, which are always uh, one you can count on when it comes to World Cups. So yeah, that is very surprising.
Okay, let's get into Major League Soccer in the week that is and the week that was. Seattle is in Spain. Toronto is heading to Marbella, and they're driving over, and they'll be over there in a couple of minutes. And what have you been able to partake, see what's going on, or are they just kind of hiding in plain sight in Spain right now with Seattle? What have you been seeing so far?
There definitely has not been a lot of content by the club or availability so far, but it's fair. We just had a week of training the past week. We got to talk to several of the guys. This week is in Portugal is explicitly about conditioning, and that was what Brian kind of stated. That's what he once again said this week in a very short, not very news filled interview he gave the team, obviously by a team staff there. But he did mention that there was going to be some formation and tactics components that they might get into, but they won't play any games, and I don't think they'll focus as much in movements and passing patterns and pressing and all that stuff until they get to Marbella. So far it's probably pretty uneventful. I think that the biggest thing I would say is that I've continued to hear that the group is getting along phenomenal, and that the new guys have come in and they have settled well with the rest of the team, and that's huge news. That the young guys sound very hungry and ready to show what they're able to do in some of these preseason games. um Prior to the team leaving, and we did not get to discuss this because obviously it was in the afternoon, we got to talk to Jesus Ferreira, and I thought that everything he said was tremendous. He talked about having to be at the facility and doing all the testing and running, because he pushed himself past being sick. He had the flu, like high fevers, but he kind of felt like he needed to be there to set an example and to kind of continue to build from last season. So I thought that was great. And then he maybe shock some people by saying that his goal is to be in the 2026 World Cup. He said he feels like he has, and I quote, I have a, oh no, maybe I won't quote, but he did say, I have a very good chance. He seems very confident that if he's able to perform with the Sounders and he's able to put it all together, he would, without a doubt, maybe get a chance at being called up by Pochettino. So I thought that was great because it does motivate a player that was very good last season, that is looking to be a leader in this team, and that extra motivation of potentially or hopefully trying to get into a World Cup is just amazing. So all in all, and I'll repeat what we said last week, the mindset's excellent from the Seattle Sounders, but particularly in this tour, European tour, between Portugal and Spain. The biggest thing is going to be building what they had last season, and building off of what they had last season, in that group being very together, very cemented.
Couple of teams I wanted to focus on, one in the Western Conference, one in the Eastern Conference, and then if there's anybody else with movement from the week or to keep an eye on, we'll go from there. But Houston seems to be interested in really just flipping over the table, and they want to bring in, it seems like they want to bring in like 98 different dudes and kind of almost start over at points, because they brought in Nick Marcanic. We know what Marcanic was able to do with Charleston in USL Championship. They've got him loaned back here to this particular side of the Atlantic. There's the Madi Bogish conversation that is out there. The numbers, to me, I think, are too steep. $6 million plus $4 million and a sell on, to me, that's a big number to bring Mati Bogish from Cruz Azul. But Houston, they don't feel like they're messing around a whole lot coming into this year because of all of this movement. And I know that it's going to be interesting for continuity's sake because we mentioned Bozat, we mentioned Lucas Halter, we mentioned Guilherme, Ache, and now Nick Marcanic is in, and the idea of Bogish. So, I mean, Houston's still adding pieces here. I'm intrigued, but it might be, for me, a bit too steep.
Maybe it's too steep, but that has been Houston's new attitude towards trying to shock this team back into relevance, if you will. I mean, even the first Ache contract, was a gamble. It was pretty big. It didn't quite pay out. And the fact they're continuing to stay on course and say, look, well, that didn't work out, but let's bring him back on a lower number and let's keep adding on to what we already have in this roster is great. And I mean, this is a loan, and loans are always good for you to be able to figure out if a player is going to come in. He gives you an opportunity to have a high potential high salary guy or potential high transfer guy for the meantime. So Houston, I think they see the writing that we've been kind of setting here in the show, is that the West is for anybody to go out there and grab. And although there are 2 teams or 3 teams that are likely going to be at the top of the pyramid, you're able to get yourself and be a protagonist. And so, Agustin Bauza coming in, the fact that, Gilmar is going to be an interesting player. I mean, they're shooting for the moon, and they should. And this is going to sound crazy because I didn't really think he was going to be as good as he was with Houston, but I thought that the coaching clearly has been set there, and there's been a new culture set up. And after talking to Nico, who had a small spell there, this is a squad that definitely has a high expectation of that group. So to me, I think Houston is planning on being a real problem next season. Do they have enough? Do I think that Bogut is going to be able to give you that next level? Not necessarily a player that I think is going to take the league by storm, but when you have all of these other elements, I do think he's going to be a very productive player.
I know I'm wondering the level of patience in both the front office and with the fan base with all of these new folks. Because it's going to, and everybody will sit there and say, well, that's what training camp is for. But yeah, training camp and exhibitions and preseason stuff is one thing, but when you're playing for points, it's something else. I'm just wondering about the level of patience and how long it's going to take them to get together as a group in game state, so you won't have a repeat of what happened last year. And if things aren't, going great off of the jump, I just wonder what the level of patience is going to be with all these new faces, even though you should be patient. But sometimes, shoot, these days, everybody's looking for instant gratification on stuff like this.
It's a great point. I think that the leash will be short, even for Ben Olsen, right? I mean, it's going to be a thing where, look, we're giving you all of this new players. We're giving you everything that you've asked for. We're trying. It has to be a winning team. This fan base has been sick and tired of not being relevant for a very long time. I've heard from guys like Glenn Davis, who is no longer going to be a commentator there, but he knows the team very well.
Yeah, don't get me started on that one.
Yeah, we won't get started on that, but I do say hey to my guy, one of the best in the biz. But every time that I talk to him, he's like, man, the culture, there's no culture. He wishes that the academies, were better and that there was a better system and all of these things. So you bring up a good point, because sometimes just throwing money at the problem isn't going to fix it, and maybe it's deeper rooted than what it is. But at the very least, Houston should be fun to watch. But that leash will be short, and they will be demanding results right off the bat for this Houston Dynamo team, which maybe sounds crazy because they haven't necessarily been a team that has had a lot of expectations. But with all these moves, you do put a little pressure on yourself.
Okay, so then we mentioned all of those moves, and then we got to talk about Pretty in Pink. We got to talk about Messi and Friends, and one that is now in the barn. They needed to bring Allende back. and they got the loan deal. Loan deal ended, and so they just it's like Celta de Vigo, hey here, and they took care of that. So Allende back, key piece to them up front last season in the run to the title. He's now back under the umbrella. Now you have Cesar Luis Merlo reporting yesterday that the Germán Berterame deal done. It's not officially official in the eyes of Messi and friends out of the Fort Lauderdale offices. Cesar Luis Merlo says done. New signing, and the numbers once again: 15 million from Messi and friends to Monterrey for Berterame, and you're getting now a new striker there. 10.5 million to Monterrey, 4.5 million to Atletico de Madrid, and it looks like it's going to be a 3.5-year deal, and for Berterame to be one of those bridges when Lionel Messi decides at the age of 74 that he's finally going to retire. So Super Deportivo reported last week, Inter Miami, Messi and friends offered 15. Rayados reluctant to accept as the amount was less than the 20 million agreed upon in the release clause. But right now, 3-year deal is being reported. Option for a fourth, 15 million euro going to 15 million US going to Monterrey from Messi and friends to bring in Berterame. Not officially official yet, but it looks like it's close. Yet another challenge by this front office and this ownership group to the rest of Major League Soccer.
Yeah, as far as I've been able to tell and find out personally, uh, what the term that was used in my conversation was that they've come to terms, and that is club, player, club, right? Both clubs and the player have all agreed to the move. There might be some things that needs to be finalized, of course, and that is always the case. But when I hear that term, is usually pretty clear cut. Obviously, Ciel Merlo, a guy that reports, and it's definitely it has to be taken as almost a certainty. I think that's a done deal. There was a lot of pushback, and I don't know if there's been enough reporting on this, but Monterrey's front office and those around the team, they weren't happy with Berterame leaving. I mean, the tournament for Mexico is getting ready to start. There isn't a replacement on the horizon. Obviously, ownership has said, yes, we have some guys in mind and this, that, and the other. But what I've heard is that there was quite a few members of that front office that did not want to take this deal. Part of it, not just the 15 million, but it's just what is the replacement and what is our contingency plan going to be for Monterrey to be a team that, as always, needs to be leading the charge in Liga MX. They've done it for a long time. This is a proud fan base. It's a proud team, and Rayados is always going to be a team that you need to be counting on for CONCACAF Cup now, for Liga MX to win it all. So I think that was part of the issues that were happening with this Berterame negotiations. But it sounds like everything's said and done. Now, when it comes to Miami, I mean, they're going to be the Dodgers of MLS. I mean, they're just a team that just gets better and better and better. They are a better team than they were last year after they won MLS Cup. I praised them for not being content, now shooting for what I'm sure is going to be winning CCC. They want to win the regional tournament. Berterame does put them that much closer to that objective for being able to do it. But there has been a lot of extra glazing on Inter Miami that I don't necessarily love. I think that you can praise and acknowledge that Inter Miami is putting all their eggs in the basket, and they're shooting for the moon, and they're adding a lot of money. But this idea that all of a sudden Miami has discovered fire is odd to me. I mean, what do you discover? That if you throw a lot of money and you have a bigger checkbook than the rest of the league, and you're able to put a super team, you're going to give yourself the best chance to win. I mean, that's just obvious, right? I mean, that is just what it is. Same thing with people having this narrative that every team should be doing what Inter Miami is doing, and there's these teams that aren't using DP spots and stuff. Go look at La Liga in transfer market and compare what that roster amount of money looks like, and it's Real Madrid, Barcelona, and everybody else. And there are some teams that Real Madrid and Barcelona are spending 10 times what some teams are spending. So it's not about the structure, the DPs, is just that the reality of the world is that in every single league, there's always going to be 2, 3 teams that have the resources to take over the league. And it's about those other teams without those resources to find a way, find a system that works to make them achieve their objectives, whether that is fighting for titles or in many cases is just not getting relegated. Go ask Godoy Cruz in Argentina what their objective is. Yeah, they've shown up, they've had titles and things like that, but for the most part, is let's just not get relegated. I mean, that's plain and simple what they want to do. So I just don't like those narratives being compared and added to this whole Inter Miami thing. But I love the move. I'm not hating on the move. I'm not hating on the club. I hate the narrative in this sense of this is what everyone has to do and this is the only way to win. Atlanta United is the prime example of you can't just throw money and you can't just buy a whole bunch of players and hope that you're going to win. We've seen it with prior teams like Cincinnati being the biggest spenders in the league and not being able to get anywhere with that sort of money. So that's all I wanted to rant on. So I'm sorry, but
Oh, no, no, no.
Berterame,
Yeah.
but Berterame, love it. Phenomenal. I would say probably one of the best strikers in CONCACAF, if not the best striker in CONCACAF. I think he's going to work perfectly with that system. I think that he's going to, at the very least, score 15 goals this season in MLS if it all gets finalized, as we all think that it will. So Miami's going to be a problem. There's no doubt about that.
Well, and to your point, and there are different ways to win things, and you can look at this, and I think it should be looked at two separate lanes of traffic here. If Messi and friends and the Moss brothers and Raul Sanlehi and that front office, if they want to sit there and act like Scrooge McDuck or Cartman rolling around in the singles, and if that's their approach, cool. You can interpret that as, okay, we want to challenge the rest of the league. Well, first off, we want to challenge the league. We want to challenge the league in how they operate. Like you're getting to the point legitimately where you're staring at a fourth DP. Fine, great. If you, I think that if you've got the setup of 3-3, then if you want to go to 2-4, meaning three DPs and 3 U22s, for me throwing out just short-term shorthand here.
Yep.
I think if you want to go 3-3, that's cool. If you want to go 2-4 and get the extra Garber bucks, that's fine. But I think also if you want to go 4-2, then you ought to have that option as well. If you want to have that fourth DP and not have that reliance on the U22 system, which is what we're seeing in Fort Lauderdale, fine, let them have that option. You may not necessarily get the GAM benefits that you're getting for going to 2-4. You might not get that extra, $2 million in Garber bucks.
Yeah.
Go 2-4. But if that's your way, great. If you want to sit there and be the Dodgers, if we take the Dodgers of Major League Soccer as your example, you're going to have those teams that are the Dodgers, that are the Yankees. They're going to be the ones that screw the luxury tax. We don't care. This is how we want to win titles. That's cool. That's fine. That's great. That's your way. That's up to you. But if you have clubs that want to develop from, say, a Philadelphia standpoint, from an Atlanta United standpoint, from a Seattle standpoint, where you have money that you look for talent. In Seattle's case, you develop through Tacoma, you bring in the young talent, you bring in an Albert Rusnak, you spend money on your key veterans. That's your prerogative. You've got the mix. You've got to sit there. You're making the Dagwood sandwich. You're sitting there and you're bragging all the luncheon meat in. You're making the big sandwich and it's got all the luncheon meat and it's like 3 or 4 slices of bread. That's your deal. That's great. Fine. Do it that way. If it's with Atlanta United, where Atlanta United comes through the academy, you've got all that young talent. You move that talent on. You move some of it on. You sit there and you get benefits from it from the sell-ons. You reinvest it in yourself. You bring in the high-priced talent. Make the Dagwood sandwich. Fine. That's your way. Find your way. Don't be bent out of shape if someone's doing it differently. But if you're both being successful, find your way and be comfortable with it. Don't sit there and look at what's going on in Fort Lauderdale. Don't sit there and look at what's going on in teams that want to spend $9 gazillion. Let them do that. Let them find out how to figure out how to pay taxes on that stuff. That's their prerogative. Find your way, be comfortable with your way. Just don't be the Pittsburgh Pirates about it.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more. And that's the reality. This radical ideas about how everything should be done by this and that or the other, or that relegation, no relegation MLS is what allows these teams to be so, uh, you know, okay with losing, and there's nothing to lose for it. Just look at the amount of changes and ownerships that have happened as of recent. I mean, look, it's obvious that if you're an owner with a team that you can't keep up with being able to find a way to win or bringing in more talent, you don't want that brand to devaluate. You want to just cash in and ship out. And that's what happened in Sporting Kansas City now. They now you have a new majority owner, and da 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 da. The Sounders are looking for new investors. I mean, that's just the way of the world, because no one wants what comes with being a losing team, which is loss of brand, loss of revenue, lose fans upset. So it all comes together, and that's all part of it. And look at Vancouver. I mean, last season they were in a CCC final.
Mhm.
They were right there in the making of trying to make it for a MLS title, and they did it without breaking the bank. I mean, they had a very good collective unit. They gave up their DP mid-season to Pumas. They were able to figure it out. They had their own way, and that's exactly what I wanted to focus on. So I appreciate you adding on to the conversation there. If I felt like I had this just thing that I needed to get out of my neck,
Dude,
so I appreciate you helping me out.
no, dude. That's why we have 2 hours every day to sit there and have these kind of conversations. Our intrepid producer Ricky Ricardo has let us know that the league has announced the transfer window dates for 26, with several amendments to rules and regs. Primary window, January 26 to March 26. That's primary window. So it's 2 months, January 26 to March 26. Secondary window opens July 13, closes September 2nd. So with that, extending into September for the first time in 2 decades, excluding 2020, conclusion of the MLS window aligns with the top leagues around the world. So now MLS is July through September 2. They're taking that secondary window and they're lining up with everybody else. It's another one of those steps as they get ready for the schedule flip coming up in a little bit. And so once again, league says MLS gives MLS teams a greater opportunity to acquire high quality international talent in their run to the playoffs. In addition, FIFA approved a request to allow MLS's 3 Canadian clubs, Montreal, Toronto, Vancouver, to adhere to the registration periods established by U.S. Soccer rather than Canada Soccer. So they're not bound by the Canadian soccer windows now. Since they are franchises in Major League Soccer, they get the U.S. window to help themselves out as well. So that is that's what you're staring at with the new rules there. Dates for roster compliance is February 20. Roster freeze is October 9. And then you can do ITCs. Let's see, per FIFA regs, MLS clubs can request ITCs, international transfer certificates, of a player under contract in another country only during one of the 2 annual registration periods fixed by the. I feel like I need to sit up a little straighter here. In another country, only during one of the 2 annual registration periods fixed by the relevant association. The first registration period must be a minimum of 8 weeks, but not exceed 12. So, okay, so that's requested required reading also, in addition to the number stuff that we talked about at the Athletic off the top. So, bottom line is that the new rules and regs are out in the windows. January 26 to March 26, July 13 to September 2, and the 3 Canadian teams can stick to those windows and not the Canadian windows. That came out about 6 minutes ago. So that's your bolo for the day when it comes to transfers and looking at that. Anything else on your radar before you go and get cup of coffee number 3?
The Joao Klauss to Galaxy is one that is going to be an interesting move. Obviously, it got reported first by Tom Bogert, but I had been looking into it because there was a couple of teams that were interested in Joao Klauss, and that goes to what I wanted to add on to Bogart's report is that. Bogart's report is that I had been told that that Joao Klauss had already expressed his interest about a potential move away from St. Louis at the end of last season. So uh, I'm not saying he asked for a trade, but he expressed that he'd be more than happy or more than okay with going somewhere else. So whether he was on the trade block or not, I have yet to confirm, but that's kind of what it sounds like. There is no other way to put it than his time in St. Louis has had a lot of ups and downs, some because of injuries, but he's a striker that has had some really big moments, and that if he does go to LA Galaxy, he fits that bill. I think that he's a guy that's going to be great on hold up, that he's huge and can give them a real presence inside the 18, that he can work with Nacimiento and allow him to continue to develop. He doesn't have to be the guy that could work well with Christian Ramirez, that I think he would allow those wingers to come inside and become other additional strikers in the final third. Right, he could hold up, he could allow him to push through, get those overlaps. I just think Klauss is going to be an interesting player for the LA Galaxy. Sounds like they haven't come to terms necessarily yet, but there's a desire from obviously Joao Klauss to go somewhere else, and I think this would be a great landing spot for him.
It looks like the number's around 2 million in the intra-league transfer trade deals. Greg Vanney quoted as saying he's an interesting option. My understanding is we're in some discussion, but I don't know how close we are. I think he gives us some uniqueness to the up top, to the top. Having someone of his stature and his quality is not a bad thing for us.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what Greg Vanney says there. One question from Tom H. Tom H. Before we get out of here, any Obed news? Is the fact that he's with Mexico instead of Sounders any indication?
No, everything's still the same. Is what I've been reported. Somebody added me on CL Merlo saying that Obed will be leaving or could be leaving in this transfer window, as if that was news. But it's Merlo, so I guess it's news because he says it. But that's exactly what we've been reporting over the last 2 weeks. I mean, we've entirely put shows just about the Obed possibility. So no news additionally to what we've talked about. The closer we get to the end of the winter window, the more likely I feel like he would be gone. There is going to be an effort from the club to move him on. There's an effort from his group, his agents, his representation to get him a good deal to move him on. So I do think that there is a lot of interest, but there has not been an official offer that has been interesting enough to say that he'll be leaving. But I think that that's one to watch on a day-to-day, week-to-week basis until the end of the transfer window. So yeah, he going to Mexico is just normal. That's his objective. The Sounders know that they want to have him take that opportunity and potentially be in the 2026 World Cup. So they allowed that to happen, although this camp isn't FIFA mandated. And that's why, the Sounders could have said no, but they definitely allowed him to go because they want to push, they want to support him to potentially get into Javier Aguirre's team for this World Cup.
Okay, so since you don't have to go to Providence and Swedish tarot card reading, fortune telling, and voter registration booth because they're over in Europe, what's going on at Sounder at Heart and Pulso Sports?
Yes, of course. We're going to be doing our typical What We Learned This Week on Friday. I have potentially good interview today. Have not heard back from the PR team. They had told me that it was going to be today, but I texted them earlier. So we might have something interesting happening there at Sounder at Heart. There's going to be a really fun interview, but I won't say the name until it's all said and done. But just check that out. We might have something interesting happening there for a very good interview with Sounder at Heart's YouTube page. Of course, on Friday, as I mentioned, we're going to do our usual What We Learned This Week. On Monday, Lobbin Scorchers with Ari Lillenwall. And on Pulso Sports, if there's any availability through the Sounders, whether it's via Zoom or whatever they want to do it with in a virtual setting, we'll definitely be there and add that into Pulso Sports. And you can, of course, watch this segment of SDH at some point in the next couple of days in case you missed it. So yeah, go ahead and check that out.
What he said. As always, my friend, great to see you. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Be safe, be well. Enjoy the news coming over from Europe. We'll catch up with you again next week. Good to see you.
Thank you, John. Have a good one.